Okay, that was the new intro song I was trying out. I hope you found it interesting, but here is my normal intro. All right. It is Monday. Yay. Well, it's Monday. It is 1:30 p.m. in Sweden, which means almost the entire world is a Monday. It is still Monday in Australia. It's still Monday in Japan. And it is Monday morning in the US. It's even Monday morning in Hawaii. So, yeah, welcome to this clusterf that is the Daubert hearing in the young thug RICO-Trial, the young slime life gang. And a quick recap. Hey, Bella Stella, Jamie, Pennyway, David, Mads, Excited Utterance, Project Metal Music, Kim Farnham, Fedorevsky, and everybody else who found their way. American Dreamer, hey. Well, a quick recap of the Daubert hearings so far. We had a medical examiner who doesn't use a standard operational procedure. And who only in her final report she adds the notes she believes are useful, and she doesn't save the rest. Yeah. And then it was some random people on the stand explaining, one cop, yes, he smelled raw marijuana in a car and therefore he could search it. That was in 2014. So it's a RICO trial. They will bring in everything this gang has done and try to make it into a RICO trial. And then last time I streamed about this, there was this gentleman who the state wanted to have accepted as an expert in forensic video analysis. And during his hour and a half testimony, we found out that he has no education in this, but that's not an issue. He could train himself and everything. But he doesn't do a yearly checkup with the modern technology. And then we found out he uses Photoshop. Which means that video enhancing forensic analysis consists of him taking a screenshot of the video, putting it in Photoshop, and then pinch and zoom. That's it. And the state wanted him in the trial as a forensic video analyst. Now, the judge compressed it to an expert in pinch and zoom, in video enhancement. But the defendant's lawyers objected and said, this is a layman testimony. It's not an expert testimony. So 3 or 4 objected to it with additional questions. So we will see what will happen. But so far, this is a RICO trial where the state is supposed to bring forward the top notch. And it, so far, in my opinion, the only thing they have shown is glorious incompetence. But maybe today we will see a real expert Who knows? Who knows? Oh, is it Jamie's birthday? Happy birthday, Jamie! Woo! Don't ask a woman her age. Oh, wait a minute. Did I see legal vices? Hey, you want to come on? I can send you a link if you have time. I will send Jeff a link. I will send him a link. Dun dun dun. There, I've sent Jeff a link and see if he wants to join us for this cluster. Yeah. It's Jamie's birthday. Yes, happy birthday to Jamie. A few of the normal YouTube stuff, like subscribe. Please subscribe, because I am 37 subscribers away from 2,000 subscribers. And it is inching its way by 3 or 4 per day or per stream. So it's inching forward. I'm hoping to be able to celebrate this on Saturday stream, on the Swedish Weird Holiday stream, where we celebrate midsummer. Give me 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, yeah. I will be on for roughly an hour and a half, somewhere between that. So you have time. Yeah. So you want to jump right into it. I believe the next to testify in the Daubert hearing is a police officer. Maybe he shows competence. You never know. Yeah. Ooh, boom, boom. Where is it? There it is. Let's see. Yeah, we are still on day 2 on the Daubert hearings, and it is a clusterf of incompetence. And we still haven't seen any of the of the times where the judge tells lawyers you're in contempt, write an essay, you're in contempt, buy your colleague's lunch. We haven't seen the supposed handling of drugs in the courthouse either. So, yeah. But what can go wrong? All
your materials to approach the witness stand, and Deputy Ingram will be swearing you as a witness, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Raise your right hand.
What was his name?
I do. Take your first and last name and spell first and last name. First name Michael, Michael. Last name Sprinkle, Sprinkel.
Good afternoon, Deputy Sprinkle. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Deputy Sprinkle, would you please tell
Oh. Michael Sprinkle. That's an unfortunate name for a man who is 5 foot -1. Who knows? You can be highly competent police officer, very intimidating at his height. Oh. Okay. Yeah. We're off to a good start.
report? Where is it you're currently employed?
I'm currently employed at the Office of the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney.
And what capacity are you employed there?
I'm a Deputy District Attorney.
Oh,
How
Deputy
long have you
District
served
Attorney.
the Fulton County District Attorney's Office as a Deputy District Attorney?
Since June 21st, 2011.
And when did you first begin with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
June 21st, 2011.
What area do you work in within the District Attorney's Office?
I am the head of the unindicted homicide unit. I review all of the murder cases
that come, well, not just murder, all homicide cases that come into the office from the various police agencies in the county.
And you made a distinction between murders and homicides. Why is that?
Well, it's not just murder. There's felony murder. There's involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, homicide by vehicle in the first degree, et cetera.
Have you always served as the head of the unindicted homicide unit?
No.
Before serving as the head of the unindicted homicide unit, what did you do within the district attorney's
How can
office?
he
For
be the
approximately
head
first
of
3 months
anything
of
when
my
he can't
employment in the
reach
DA's
the
office,
top
I
of
was
the
what
counter?
was
I
called,
don't-
I was assigned to what was called at the time the complaint room, which was a 24-hour operation in which I would receive or be assigned cases that were coming in live. Essentially, somebody had just been arrested and the police would send a report. I would review it, speak with the officer, draft some sort of affidavit to summarize the case, and otherwise ready the case for first appearance the following morning. Following that, I was assigned to the non-complex division. I was in that division for 3 to 6 months. It sounds about right. That involved the prosecution of cases that were deemed
Apparently he's in the
non-complex, such as
whoopsie
possession
squad.
of cocaine and theft by taking under a certain value. After my time in the non-complex division, I was assigned to the complex trial division for about a little less than 2 years, signed to Judge Schwall's courtroom and then Judge Constance Russell's courtroom. And then in October of 2013, I was assigned to the unindicted homicide unit, albeit I was not the head of the unindicted homicide unit, though. If memory serves correctly.
Well, he can be the head of this unit because he can be on the shoulders of 2 other short people. That's-
I was the only attorney in the unit, so I suppose in a way.
what? He was the only attorney in that unit? Then you're not a head of the unit. You are the unit. I mean, I'm the boss of my farm. You're self-employed. Your point being, I mean, that's, but homicide is not a crime. Murder, manslaughter, so is the name not a misnomer. Homicide is what everything is called before they have labeled it. I mean, oh, this is going to be a fun Monday.
I was the head, given that I was the only one. But then as time went on, the unit expanded. I was promoted.
He gave himself head. Never mind.
And now there's more employees in the unit. Now I'm the deputy in charge of it.
Within the homicide unit of the district attorney's office, do you receive cases involving homicides where persons are charged or already arrested?
Yes.
And is it always the case that a person has been charged or arrested when you receive a file within the office?
No.
When you do receive a file wherein a person has been arrested,
It's the trash
do you
unit.
immediately present that case to the
We
grand
can make
jury?
heads of tails
No.
for this. You
Why is
do
that?
it.
Well, I want to ensure that the person who's been charged or arrested primarily committed the crime that it is alleged they committed. So in order to do that, I inspect the case file, which primarily, if not, well, I don't want to say exclusively, because there are some things that I find on my own. But when I'm preliminarily looking at a case file, I look at what the police have sent me, their reports, their interviews, cell phone records,
I know where I've seen him before. I know where I've seen him before. I mean, isn't that him? Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a hobbit on the stand.
extractions of cell phones, when the police actually copy the data out of somebody's cell phone. And I just go over all of this to make sure it's consistent with what has been alleged in the arrest warrants.
And do you always have all of the information within the case file given to you by law enforcement that you feel you need in order to fully complete the investigation on a homicide?
No, not always, no.
And what types of steps do you take to ensure that you have obtained as much information as you can? Do you, for instance, do you pull jail calls?
Yes,
Do you speak with witnesses?
I do on occasion, yes.
Do you go to scenes?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Your Honor,
Is it preliminary matter? Is it preliminary matters?
thank you.
I'll allow it. Over the objection.
Thank you. Do you go to scenes?
Yes,
Do you seek search warrants?
yes,
And do you present evidence to other entities for further testing?
yes.
And does that always take limited amounts of time, or is that sometimes more protracted?
Well, it depends on the case and the volume of deficiencies that I have identified in the initial investigation.
Bringing you to the case involving the murder of Donovan Thomas, do you recall when you received that case file within the district attorney's office?
Would have been late, probably December 2015, January of 2016, somewhere around there. It's actually probably going to be January of 2016, to be more exact.
And without going into specifics about what that was, at the time that you received that case file, was it complete to your satisfaction as an assistant district attorney?
Well, it depends on how you define the word complete. Was it complete insofar as the Atlanta Police Department was concerned? I don't know. I know that they handed me everything that I asked for. If there were some other documents that the Detective Thorpe still had in his file, they just didn't give to me. I have no way of knowing that. As far as I know, what the Atlanta Police Department gave me was the complete case file.
And did you review that complete case file that you received from the Atlanta Police Department?
I did.
Upon reviewing that case file, were you satisfied that the case was sufficient to present to the grand jury as you received it at that time?
No.
Did you take additional?
He couldn't even present the case to grand jury. And for you a little bit in the know, grand jury is where the prosecution brings forward what only their case only to get to trial. And he didn't believe there was enough in the case file to even bring it to a grand jury, where he could spin it any way he wanted. Oh.
Steps to investigate the case?
Yes.
Now, at the time, a person had been arrested on the murder, is that correct?
Yeah, at least one person had been arrested on the murder.
And that person was the defendant Shannon Stillwell?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
From what you were able to gather from the file that Detective Thorpe gave you and from your subsequent investigation of the case that you did, was Mr. Stillwell the only person of interest in that case? Was he the only alleged participant in the homicide?
Well, no, there were three other. If we're talking about the people that had been charged by the police, there were four.
Okay, go ahead.
There was Antonio Sledge, Demikian Garlington, Kenneth Copeland, and Shannon Jackson, aka Shannon Stillwell. Those were the four people that the police charged for the murder of Donovan Thomas in late 2015.
And were you able to determine, based on your review of the file given to you by Detective Thorpe, what primarily those arrests were based on?
They were primarily based on the statement of a young man named Spencer Wright.
All right. And when you received the file from Detective Thorpe, did you endeavor to speak with Spencer Wright yourself?
I did.
Why is that?
Well, so Spencer Wright, according to his statement, he witnessed the homicide, the drive-by shooting, as he stood at a bus stop on McDaniel Street across the street from the barber shop, the parking lot of which Mr. Donovan Thomas stood when he suffered his fatal gunshot wounds. There was a surveillance camera mounted on that barber shop, and the bus stop where Mr. Wright said he stood was in the viewing area of that surveillance camera. And when I looked at the footage, I didn't see anyone standing at the bus stop. I saw a cat at one point milling about the bench at the bus stop, and I only bring that up to indicate that the clarity was sufficient to tell if there was a human being standing there. There was no human being standing there. So what I wanted to do was speak with Mr. Wright and show him I believe I printed off some still images. I don't think I brought in a computer or something to show him the actual footage. So I wanted to speak with Mr. Wright and make sure, first thing I did is I wanted to speak with him and make sure that I was clear as to where he was standing. So I actually, before I confronted him with the fact I didn't see him on the video, I had some printouts from Google Earth, and I asked him to point to the specific bus stop where he said he was standing. And when he did, he pointed to the bus stop that was depicted on the surveillance footage, at which point I said, but there's nobody standing at that bus stop. And he didn't really have an explanation for me.
Did you receive that surveillance footage from the Atlanta Police Department?
Yeah, yes.
Did you?
So they are bringing this in the RICO trial to get the whole thing in against them as a gang. But this guy is explaining the police charge these 3 men or 4 for the drive-by thingy. They had a witness, but that witness was obviously lying. So why is this even? I don't understand how what this has to do with a Daubert hearing, but maybe Jeff can explain when he comes on, because if there isn't enough even for a grand jury, and he deemed the witness be a liar, why are we listening to this? Why is this the state's case, a part of the state's case? They were suspects. So freaking what? And the cat might have been a witness, but I doubt they will put the cat on the stand.
As you stated, you pulled Google Earth images. Was that something that you had received from the Atlanta Police Department, or is that something that you did to further your investigation?
That was something I did to aid in my interview with Mr. Wright. I just pulled up Google Earth and
he
took
can be an
screenshots of the bus
expert
stop, the general area
in
where the
Photoshop.
homicide occurred, so he could point to them and indicate where he stood, where he claimed to have been standing, I should say.
And why did it concern you that he was not shown in the surveillance footage that you presented to him, yet he claimed to have witnessed the homicide?
Well, he claimed that the bus stop was his vantage point from which he witnessed the 4 defendants that I mentioned earlier occupying a vehicle and commit the drive-by shooting. If he wasn't standing at the bus stop, that would suggest he didn't witness it at all.
Was there anything else that you were able to uncover during your ensuing investigation of this case that enlightened you more as to whether or not Mr. Wright was presenting to you information that was factually accurate?
Yes. So after my interview with him, I requested from the Atlanta City Jail, because that's where he was when I interviewed him. I interviewed him inside the Atlanta City Jail. He was an inmate there. From somebody that worked at the Atlanta City Jail, whose name
So he was
I
a
don't
prison snitch.
recall.
Get out.
I asked him
Imagine
to
that,
send me
prison snitch
Mr.
lying.
Wright's recorded jail calls, because just like the Fulton County Jail, at least at that time, the phone calls placed by inmates from the Atlanta City Jail were recorded. So when I obtained Mr. Wright's jail calls, I found one that was he placed shortly after his arrest to a gentleman. And during this call, and this is, by the way, not verbatim, okay? I'm not quoting him exactly, but he told his friend about his recent arrest, which I believe was on a probation violation. And he said that everything would be okay because he was helping the police solve a murder. And his friend asked, well, what murder was that? He said Nuts murder. And that nut would be the.
So the cops wanted these 4 guys in prison. They found this guy on probation violation, told him speculatively, you testify that you saw this and we will get you out. But this prosecutor actually did his job and investigated. If this had been Gravely or the other gentleman from Kenosha County, those 4 people would have been in jail for life, because I have no issue saying that Gravely would have found a way to convict these 4 guys on basically nothing, because we know with the Zachariah Anderson trial that Gravely does virtually anything, including lying in court, to get conviction. Oh, thank you, Wolfram, for gifting 5 memberships. And gifted was Frigg Snowden, Jennifer O, Project Metal Music, Darcy, and Tam Jules. Welcome as members. You are now Vikings saying hi. And there are member-only stuff on my channel. You're most welcome to check it out. Members-only videos and stuff like that. And you will be involved in proposing new trials to watch and help me out with intros and thumbnails and stuff like that. So welcome, and thank you again, Wolfram. Now, it seems like Hobbit here actually did his job. The key part here is he doesn't actually help the state's RICO case in this, does he? I don't think so. So, yeah.
Moniker for Donovan Thomas, and his friend scoffed at him and said, "But you didn't witness that." And Mr. Wright responded, he basically shushed him, reminding him that they were on a recorded jail line. But and the implication there was that he didn't witness it. And he would prefer that his friend not, utter such a thing on a recorded jail phone. And then he said, but it's something to the effect of, it doesn't matter. We all know what happened anyway. And it's also worth mentioning that during my interview with Mr. Wright, very soon into the interview, something that caught my attention was, he said, you see, I've been on Instagram, or said, again, not verbatim, but he mentioned that he had been on Instagram and putting the pieces together from there, which put up a red flag, made me think that perhaps he was just compiling his statement through rumors that he saw on the internet. So after I heard that jail call, I asked investigator David White. I knew who he was talking to. I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but the gentleman that he was talking to, and the same gentleman that said, but you didn't witness that, et cetera. So my investigator reached out to him and asked him, well, how did you know that Mr. Wright didn't witness the murder of Donovan Thomas? And he said, well, that murder was a really big deal in the city, and I'm pretty close with Mr. Wright, and he never mentioned to me that he had witnessed it. And it's the kind of thing that he would have mentioned had he witnessed it. So at that point, I was satisfied that Mr. Wright didn't really witness the murder at all, and he just made it up.
Why didn't you just go ahead and present the information to the grand jury as had been presented to you by the Atlanta Police Department? People had been arrested. Is it an imperative that you immediately get the case indicted?
Objection.
Who's made the objection?
Self-serving.
I sustain as to form. You can rephrase it. You can rephrase it.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Sprinkle, is there any reason in particular why you did not go ahead and present the indictment to the grand jury with the names and the information that had been given to you from the police department?
Well, for one thing, I'm not the one who decides what cases are presented to the grand jury, but if I was, I still wouldn't, because at that point, out of 3 of the 4 defendants, I had a complete absence of evidence that they committed the murder at all. And I wouldn't present a case naming a specific individual. I wouldn't present an indictment to a grand jury wherein a specific individual is alleged to have committed a crime when there's a total absence of evidence that they actually committed the crime.
Gravely,
that would actually violate some bar rules for me to do that.
And Your Honor, if the court would, just so that I'm aware, is there any other party to this defendant Stillwell's motion to dismiss that I'm unaware of?
I have not. The court is not unaware of anybody else who's joined in this particular issue.
Okay.
So.
Your Honor, if I can answer that now, Mr. Dorsey. The state keeps saying that because this is RICO, everything applies to everything. I have adopted the motions of everybody, so I do reserve the right to ask some questions of the witness, Your Honor. But based on the theory that the state says that because it's RICO, everything applies to my client, I do want to make it very clear. I can have nothing to do with this.
Your Honor, this is Shannon Stillwell's assertion of his constitutional right to a speedy trial. I do not believe that Mr. Chadha or his client have any right to assert as it relates to
Not yet,
Shannon
not yet.
Stillwell's assertion of his right or the denial thereof to a speedy trial.
So why do you bring in
And I would ask that the
worthless
court,
stuff if it's a
limit,
speedy trial?
Questioning and argument and commentary to the parties that are involved in this particular motion.
Your Honor, as it relates to Mr. Mark Quavius, he has nothing to do with it as well in terms of the specifics of a murder. However, he's a part of this indictment.
Yeah, well, the issue you're gonna have is that since it's a RICO case and anything can be attributed to any other defendant, that's why that they have a right of confrontation as to this. Now, so the specific relief is only available to Mr. Stillwell, but counsel are entitled to ask other questions as they see fit.
Yes, Your Honor.
I don't get it.
Your Honor,
If
I may,
there was no evidence, there was no evidence. How can this be in a RICO trial if there is virtually no evidence?
Again, as the court has indicated, because this is a RICO indictment, Mr. Williams is charged in it. He has an interest and an ability to pose objections if necessary.
Deputy Sprinkle, after you determined that the information that you had been given was inaccurate or could not be verified, did you take additional steps to investigate the homicide, the murder of Donovan Thomas?
I did.
And would you tell the court whether or not this was a sort of high-profile case within the office?
It was.
And are you able to say what impact the case itself had on the office or on the city of Atlanta that caused it to be a high-profile case?
Basis.
Irrelevant. What does high-profile case have to do with anything?
All right.
I'll respond. Your Honor.
Why don't you explain that for our rule?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the reason that I asked about it being a high-profile case is to sort of lay the groundwork for the fact that the office did not seek to not investigate or to not make sure that we got the case right.
Triple negative? What
By
in
asking
the...
whether it was a high-profile case, it's to bring out to the court the mindset with which Deputy Sprinkle investigated the case.
Okay, I'm gonna overrule your objection. Go ahead, man.
Oh, fuck.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I've overruled your objection.
Did that murder carry with it a series of violent shootings within the city of Atlanta?
Yes, for many years following that.
Basis. Why don't you rephrase?
I can do that. Thank you, Judge. After the murder of Donovan Thomas, were there multiple shootings within the city of Atlanta within days, sometimes weeks of one another?
Objection, relevance.
I have
There's multiple
one
shootings
basis.
going on in the district.
I'm gonna let her finish, okay, and then I'll, okay? All right, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. Were there multiple shootings within the city of Atlanta?
Yeah,
There's always shootings
I
in the
was gonna
city of
say
Atlanta.
As to leading, why don't you ask him what happened as a result of that, if he knows, if any?
Oh, I have...
After the murder of Donovan Thomas, and let me back up, were there any gang implications to the investigation? In other words, during your investigation and during your initial review of the file, was there any indication from the information that you had within the file that the murder was gang related?
yes.
And what gangs were alleged to have been involved?
Englewood family, that was the gang to which Mr. Donovan Thomas was a member, a high-ranking member. And the other gang was YSL, or Young Slime Life, to which Mr. Williams was a member.
Did you gain knowledge?
I'm gonna object to that
Basis.
answer.
Basis.
Speculation, and after to be stricken.
I'm gonna overrule the objection. What's your objection?
It's a legal conclusion. Criminal street gang is a legally defined term, has to be determined by 12 people from the city from.
That may be in front of a jury, but this is the district attorney's investigation. I'm gonna overrule your objection.
Your Honor, so just so I'm clear, we are speaking just in layman's terms when we say gang at this moment, not in legal terms.
I'm still gonna overrule your objection, okay? Thank you.
And during the weeks and months following Donovan Thomas's murder, did you have information that led you to believe that a series of retaliatory shootings between YSL and Inglewood family took place across the city of Atlanta?
I'm gonna object because it calls for hearsay.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
Your Honor, the defendant, Shannon Stillwell, has alleged an intentional delay on the part of the state. What led us to further our
Yeah,
investigation?
you said it would
What
be
information
15 to
do you
20
have?
minutes.
Goes to conduct?
Yes,
All right, I'm gonna overrule the objection.
thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Did you have information that led you to believe that a series of retaliatory shootings between YSL and Inglewood family happened after Donovan Thomas's murder?
Yes, there were cases where the victims were identified as YSL or Englewood family, and the shooters were also identified as YSL or Englewood family. And commonly, the shooters would generally be in the rival gang. I don't want to say there were no cases that involved the same members of the same gang shooting at each other, but primarily it was opposing gangs that were shooting at each other. The participants that were identified were opposing gangs. Those two gangs specifically, yes.
And during that time, did you and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office gang unit work closely with the Atlanta Police Department in an effort to solve the murder of Donovan Thomas, as well as find out whether or not those series of shootings were related, in fact, to the murder of Donovan Thomas?
The gang unit, the office's gang unit, I believe they were in consultation with Detective Thorpe, but I don't recall speaking with Detective Thorpe prior to him obtaining warrants for the arrest of the four men that he originally charged.
And that is before the arrest of the persons that were originally charged. I'm speaking of during the months in the year 2015, 2016. Did you obtain more information that led you to believe that the murder of Donovan Thomas was gang-related?
Right. Well, yeah, I would routinely consult with Detective Tyrone Dennis with the Atlanta Police Department. He also worked very, very closely on the murder case and alongside Detective Jim Thorpe Jr.
And were there incidents, shooting incidents that took place, and other incidents that took place that involved members of the alleged offending gang or YSL?
Yes, either, as I said, the victim was identified as being in one gang or the other. The shooters were identified as being in the opposite gang. There were shell casings that, when placed under microscopes and the tool mark on the back of the casing was compared to various incidents, they would find that similar guns, or the same guns, I should say, were used in these various incidents, which could possibly indicate that the same participants were involved.
And did you prepare a supplemental report to the case file that you have been given by Detective Thorpe in order to outline the investigation that you conducted in this case between the time that you received it and November 13, 2018?
Yes.
I am showing to you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 1.
Yeah, Ms. Love, we're gonna just use the next exhibit in order. So what's that, Ms. Rosenwasser?
11. Would the court like for me to then label it State's Exhibit?
States 11, yes, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind, please.
I sure will. I'm showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 11. SS. Would you take a look at it? In your honor, I will, at the end of this tendering of this exhibit, ask that the court allow me to tender a digital copy of this as evidence. Under seal.
Okay. Yes, I've looked at State's Exhibit 11.
Does State's Exhibit 11 contain the supplemental report that you prepared outlining and detailing the investigation that you conducted up until November 13th of 2018?
It does, but as you can see, I brought a copy of my report to the stand with me anyway, and it looks like there may be a page missing from this one because my report has a page that only has about 2 sentences on it, but so this may be a page short, basically.
And
Prosecution talked about this too.
Oh, never mind. There it is. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we
If
found
it
it.
was, or,
I think he just testified that he's missing some sentences, so we just appreciate we get a copy of whatever he's actually doing.
he would be entitled to, he would be required to update that particular as part of continuing discovery. So to the extent, Ms. Love, you have not done that, go ahead and do so, okay?
thank you, Your
All right,
Honor.
okay.
Deputy Sprinkle, would you please clarify for the court whether or not the page you were referencing is contained within State's Exhibit 11?
It is. You just turn the page over. It turns out I guess it was facing the wrong way. So no, that's my fault.
Deputy Sprinkle, are you a page short? Kim, Kim caught it before me.
Okay, so granted,
Your Honor, I object.
And Your Honor,
basis, is this part of the order that I entered before?
No, it's not.
Why do you want to enter it under seal, madam?
only because it contains information.
So she got surprise evidence.
The
Oh.
defense has been provided this report on August 8th, I believe, 2022 in its entirety. I am happy to let defense counsel look at it, review it, and compare it to their copy of the discovery that has been previously served.
Okay,
My issue is not with under seal per se.
but then I'm going to seal it then, okay?
No, it's not with that. My issue is admitting, we're having a.
Well, you're,
It's
okay.
hearsay.
No, but you've made it an issue for the purposes of your speedy trial demand.
Right.
So they're introducing as part of what they, as if I understand it, given the factors, is that what they did and the reason for the delay. Is that what you're doing, Ms. Love?
Yes.
So I mean, so that's why they're introducing it for for that limited purpose. So
With all due respect, Your Honor, he can testify to what he did.
he just did, but in terms of if the case goes up on appeal, then of course the appellate court will have an opportunity to take a look at it.
Okay. RICO. The RICO Act is the Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act from 1970. And it says here, seeks to... Dun, dun, dun! Jeff!
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing fine. It's extended lunch time for me. It extends the rest of the day, so I'm good. How are you
That's-
doing?
That's the best kind of lunch.
Yeah,
The one that goes all day.
yeah, I like those lunches. Atheist Ant here asked me to please explain what RICO Act is. And it says here from the Library of Department of Justice. The racketeer
That's the
influence-
official place.
Yay! The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act of 1970 seeks to strengthen the legal tools in evidence gathering, by establishing new penal prohibitions and providing enhanced sanctions and new remedies for dealing with the unlawful activities of those engaged in organized crime. Which translates to we want to convict these people, but we don't have enough strong evidence. Please let us allow in any weak evidence we can find.
I mean, then basically it's like, I mean, in its very, very simplest terms. It's a group of people we don't like, so we're gonna call them a racketeer influenced and corrupt organization, which, I mean, they're all acting together independently for a common purpose. So what one person does can be attributed to everybody else in the group.
Apparently there's it's a separate Georgia.
It's a Georgia case. Yes, it is Georgia. Jeffrey Lamar Williams.
Mm.
But it's basically going to be the same thing. I mean, it's gonna
under the Georgia RICO law, it is a crime for any person through a pattern of racketeering activity to acquire or maintain any interest in or control of any type of property or business.
I mean, this is how they go after the the Hells Angels, the motorcycle clubs, and the mafia and whatnot, and the other gangs. Something's wrong with my sound? I sound awesome to me.
It sounds like you are in the background of sorts. I don't know.
Well, then I bet I know what happened. I'll just shut up and I'll fix it. Continue.
Well, that was an explanation of RICO Act in general, in federal level and Georgia level. It is just the way, as Jeff said, we don't like these people. They are a gang. Let us bring any evidence we have, even things that Mr. Sprinkles here.
There, all fixed.
Yeah, like Mr. Sprinkles testified to, they had this drive-by shooting, and he didn't even bring it to the grand jury because there was virtually no evidence. And it's still in the RICO trial because they believe that these four in the YSL gang was involved.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how they get around. I have one piece of evidence against one guy, another one piece of evidence against another guy, and a third piece of evidence against a fourth person. But because it's under RICO, all three of those can be attributed to every single one of the people in the evil group.
And at the start of this everything, it was 28 defendants. So that means that if guy 1 did something, the other 27 can be convicted of it under the RICO Act.
Yep.
Yay! That can't be abused. The prosecution would never abuse such a thing, Jeff.
Well, I mean, they what? What are you laughing at?
No.
What?
No.
What'd they do?
I was sarcastic, and you started answering serious.
Well, I mean, just another comment. This is Georgia RICO, but all the RICO statutes were pretty much impotent, and nobody could do anything. Especially until Rudy Giuliani came along in the 80s and finally figured out how to use RICO, and he essentially used RICO to crush the mafia, the mobs in New York. And so he was the first one to really figure out how he could effectively use RICO to go after people. And everybody everywhere since has followed his template for going after RICO people.
Yeah, okay. There was a cat in the bus stop that witnessed the drive-by. So there is some form of evidence. I don't think they were
hanging around the bus stop.
Oh. Yeah. Have you heard? I don't know if you've seen any of my coverage, but just a quick recap. The first witness in the first day of the Daubert hearing was the chief medical examiner. She on the stand explained that she doesn't follow SOP, standard operational procedure. And once she finalized her report, she attaches the notes she believes are useful, and she doesn't save the rest. That
Okay.
that might be an issue. And then the first witness on the second day was the state wanted him in as a forensic video analyst.
Mm-hmm.
And once they got to talk to him, they found out that he has no formal education, which is not necessarily a problem.
Nice.
But he also has no publications. He have never had his work peer reviewed or even reviewed. And then what he does, as he explained, he takes the video, he makes a screenshot, puts it in Photoshop, and then pinch and zoom.
This is the pinch and zoom expert guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Cut the tail end of that.
Yeah. And but just the fact that the state wanted him as a forensic video analyst. But the judge allowed him in as a video enhancer expert.
He can set the day and date on his clock, so
Yeah.
he knows how to use video equipment.
No, it was not my pussy at that bus stop. No. Yeah.
Happy Pride Month to you and Detective Sparkle or Mr. Sparkle or DH Sparkle, whatever.
District attorney. He was the head of an office.
I'm a little bit suspicious of an assistant district attorney who's being so candid that they didn't have a case. It's got to go somewhere. It has to change at some point too. And then this happened, so we finally had a case. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, me too.
Looks like the judge is too.
For the record, I would just like to say that there's a lot more in that report than what he's testified to through live testimony. And we are objecting to conducting this hearing through proffer, which is essentially what we're doing.
Well, you got live testimony because you haven't even examined Mr. Sprinkle yet. So you certainly will be able to do that. But I'm going to admit it and seal it over your objection to States 11, okay? And you'll be able to get with Miss Love and her colleagues and take a look at the original, the
Mr.
discovery that you were
Sprinkle, Miss
provided
Love?
back in August.
What is this, Reservoir Dogs 2? That reads like a fucking Dickens novel.
Yeah, or
bus stop to see the pussy with Mr. Sprinkle came along and
Mr. Sprinkle and Miss Love. That's a poorly viewed video on RedTube.
Poorly viewed by who? I mean, I got the whole thing memorized.
But you do know I've seen Mr. Sprinkles before.
Yeah. He's dressed better here, though.
Yeah.
In relation to this particular document, and the state will need to, of course, disclose or give you that particular evidence, anything discovery they haven't done so far. Okay.
And we will be able to cross-examine Mr. Sprinkle on all of the contents of that document that's being admitted as evidence. What I want to make sure we're able to do.
If they're introducing in evidence, yeah, you get to cross them about anything you want in terms of that particular document.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Oh, he looks like he's exasperated. Scout face.
Your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas ceased entirely as of November 13th, 2018.
No, it didn't.
Would you just briefly encapsulate some of the additional investigations that you participated in or conducted between 2018 and May 2021?
Okay, so in 2019, there were at least 2 gang-related murders that involved the YSL Street Gang and the Englewood Family Street Gang. One was a February 23rd, 2019 murder, involving a victim named Jamari Holmes and some YSL gang members named Damone Blaylock and Rodalius Ryan. I did a lot of work on that case. But for purposes of this hearing, I did a search warrant to Instagram for, I believe it was 4 or 5 accounts belonging to YSL gang members. Now, the reason why is that search warrant was for the accounts of the people that were participants in the February 23rd, 2019 murder of Jamari Holmes, of course. But with any search warrant that I did for concerning either one of those gangs, the murder of Donovan Thomas was always really just on the front of my mind, because that
Why?
it was the murder of Donovan Thomas that was essentially the primary genesis of the dispute between these two gangs that had claimed the lives of so many people and wounded countless others. So I always, when investigating any case.
Madam.
Your Honor, Deputy Sprinkle is talking about the investigation that he continued to conduct into the murder of Donovan Thomas and why it is.
I would have changed
that
my
he
name
did
if
what he did
if
during
my
that
last name was
investigation.
Sprinkle
If, again,
and I was
the
5
state's
foot
intent
-1,
is
I
an
would
issue,
change my name.
Unless I
Mr.
was making
Sprinkle's
donuts or something.
steps
Yeah.
taken during the investigation are
Cookies.
Mr.
reflective of the
Sprinkle's
state's
donut
intent.
shop. Yeah.
Okay. I'll overrule
That's
your
it,
objection, sir. What is it you want to tell me? I mean, I've overruled the objection, so what more do you want me to know?
The state just proffered evidence, and I don't think that's correct, Your Honor. They
Well, then cross-examine him when you got him on cross.
I understand.
So you're a little you're a little early, okay? When you got him on cross, you can ask him these questions that you're not allowing them to answer right now. But it's relevant for the purposes of delay and the reason for delay.
Sounds like this guy has not
So can
ever
we move
tried a
on from
RICO
that?
case before.
Okay.
The judge keeps telling him to shut up and you can't do that and you're stupid and sit down and everything.
2021, was the case involving the murder of Donovan Thomas turned over to a
Tell me this,
specific
when was
team
this?
in the district attorney's office?
This
as part
was
of a broader
5 months
investigation?
ago.
It was.
All right, and who was it turned over to?
Far too many
And
masks
Don
for my
Geary
liking.
They
is
still
the
haven't
primary
gotten it
attorney
to
on the
trial.
case.
And is
I have twice
that
tried
case,
to get the jury going, but
or did that
we had to
case
throw one
form the basis for the
potential juror in
indictment
prison.
that the defendant
to
sits on
videotape
today,
the hearing.
charged with both the murder of Donovan Thomas and the murder of Shamel Drake?
Yes, yes, it is, because I at that point was consulting with my coworkers and recommending that we pursue an indictment on the murder case, at which point the others just determined that a team should be assembled because this case was encompassed a lot more than just the murder of Donovan Thomas. So at that point, my case file was handed, but that was the first step, was my investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas. And then I wasn't working very closely with them. I would of course answer their questions, of which they had many when they had them, but I wasn't in a room working with them on a daily basis. But from what I understood and what we'd eventually see when the indictment came out, was they were working on this vast RICO case.
And are you aware of a wiretap being used to gain information in furtherance of the investigation of this?
Wait, so is this a
RICO
case where the
that
grand
you
jury didn't indict them, so they
referenced
just decided
now?
to do it themselves?
Yeah,
What the hell's going on here? I'm confused.
He didn't even bring it to a grand jury.
Yeah. Wow.
Because there were virtually no evidence.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure where everything else came in with the wiretap. So it must have been through other shootings involved, and then they got a wiretap of sorts.
Suppose we'll find out.
Yeah. But I said this before. Gravely should listen to this guy when he says, I had no evidence to bring to a grand jury, so I didn't bring it to a grand jury. And Gravely, he would have invented evidence, as he did, to,
Yeah.
Hmm.
You know, it seems like a good prosecutor. I mean, a good assistant DA here.
So far.
so far.
Drafted all the documents associated with it and performed the minimization procedures and reviewed the periodically would spot review the work of the modders.
And was that in April 2022?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. April 2022. I think towards the end of that month. Yes.
And did the investigation that took place between the time that you were given the file by Detective Thorpe and the time that this case was initially presented to the grand jury form the basis for the indictment 22 SC 183572?
Yes.
Thank you. Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
So eventually they brought forward something against someone, I guess.
And they all piled on.
Oh, that's dark. We need someone who don't shake.
Deputy Sprinkle, between November 2018 and May 2021, did you work with any other prosecutors on this case or on the investigation involving the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Well,
Did you at any time work with Deputy Kiera Convery?
oh, yes. Deputy Kara Convery and I spoke about this case and exchanged information on a regular basis throughout the entirety of the investigation.
And where did Deputy Kiera Convery work within the district attorney's office?
She was the head of the gang unit. I don't recall which year. I know Gabe Banks was the head right when the case came in. I believe you were the head of the gang unit at some point, and then Kara Convery, probably by 2019, she was the head of the gang unit.
Was there ever a time, Deputy Sprinkle, that you delayed this case to get a tactical advantage over the defendant, Shannon Stillwell?
No, I didn't want to delay the case at all.
No, absolutely
And
not.
was this a case of average complexity?
No, this is an extremely complex case.
As RICO cases are.
Just one moment, Your Honor. That's all that I have for now.
All right, Mr. Sharp, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, one attorney is named Shark. The names in this trial are amazing.
Seriously, it's like a Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah. Sprinkle sparkles while speaking with Miss Love at the bus stop in front of a cat. That would be the parody of Lost in Translation, I believe. Oh. Is this a soap opera comedy? It's a clusterfuck. Yeah. But I listened to lead attorney because he's working out from Georgia. And he said in his interview with someone else, I got that copyright struck because I showed the interview, that the defense, there were 28 defendants. They are now down to 11, but at the start, 28. And that meant the public defender's office, they couldn't take everybody on because conflict of interest. So they had to expand and bring in private attorneys. They chose to pay $15,000 as a clump sum for the entirety of this. So there are still at least 4 defendants in jail without attorneys, and who still haven't had they haven't even had their bond hearing.
Oh, that sucks.
A year later. And the attorneys are being paid $15,000 for the entirety of this.
Well, that explains why it seems like some of them don't know what they're doing in RICO trials.
Yeah. And me and Branka was discussing this, and it seems almost like the state uses this as a tactic to get people to take plea deals. Because so far 8 people have taken plea deals and are going to testify against the other people. So it seems to work.
Oh, well, at least
But,
a group of lawyers are going to get their pro bono hours for the next 10 years taken care of here.
yeah. But let's see, cross-examination time. We can watch about 25 more
Sprinkle, how you
minutes,
doing today?
and I believe
Very well, sir. How are you?
on.
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
I got about
American
10
Monday.
minutes left myself.
As I understand it, your role
Yeah,
in the
I
DA's
will
office
go on until
is
you started.
you receive a case file from APD.
Well, many times, most of the time actually from APD, but there are other agencies in Fulton County, of course.
And you work on that case file and bring it up, build it up for indictment if you feel that is warranted.
Correct.
Okay. But you did tell us that you are not the person who decides when to indict a case.
That's correct.
Who is that person?
Well, back in 2015, 2016,
Yes,
that would have been the district attorney, Paul Howard.
that was Mr. Howard back in 2015 and 2016. Okay. How long did Mr. Howard have that decision-making power on when Shannon Stillwell would be indicted on the 2015 case?
Well, presumably all the way up until the last day of 2020. I believe that was the last day he was in office. I could be wrong about that, but it would have definitely been around that time.
And who took over that decision-making power in 2020?
The current DA, Fonnie Willis, and her and her agents, people like myself and Adam Body and Pat Dutcher.
Okay.
The name
So
is
when
fine.
Ms. Love asks if you delayed the indictment
Miss
to get
Fanny
a
and Miss
tactical
Love.
advantage on Shannon Stillwell, it wasn't even your decision, was it?
That is correct. That is correct.
That question about choosing when to indict from 2015 to 2020 should be asked of Paul Howard, correct?
I cannot.
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
The question
Grounds.
about whether or not the decision to indict should have been left to Paul Howard is not proper. It does not speak to Deputy Sprinkle's
I can't not laugh when she
actions
says
and
that.
steps that he took during this investigation in order to make sure that it was thoroughly vetted.
Mr. Sprinkles is on an
You're trying to
adventure.
create the impression that Mr. Sprinkle's the one that called the shots, and he's clearly not. And now that I've asked him about it, and
He
it's
looks like
clear
he's
he
about
did,
to bust
now
a
it's
bust a
irrelevant.
rap himself.
They asked him if he delayed the indictment of Shannon Stillwell. I'm saying it was delayed, and my client has been prejudiced,
Okay, that's
and I
fair.
want to hear from the person who made that decision.
Well, it's one factor that I'll weigh, Mr. Short. So go ahead and move on.
Mr. Shart? Come on, these aren't real names.
Because we've had another district attorney since then, and it's part of the overall investigation. So his response might be,
Love short
I'm assuming it's correct, but certainly has to be looked at in terms of the continuum of other things that went on in this case. So, and I'm sure you're going to examine him about those.
Yes, Your Honor, and so
They've all just
starting in
agreed to use
2020,
fake
the
names.
decision
Come
making
on, I
was
don't believe this.
Yeah. Just
DA
Mr.
Fonnie
Green,
Willis.
Mr. Brown,
2021,
Mr.
yes,
White,
2021.
anything but
All right.
Short, Love, and Sprinkles. I mean,
And Shart, apparently.
When was Shannon Stillwell charged in this case?
I believe it was September of 2015.
Okay. If I suggested that was October 2015, would you dispute me on that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Want to fight about it?
And would you dispute that he was arrested in October of 2015?
I'm quite sure it would have been around that time, the last quarter of 2015. Based on when I received the case file, that would be in line with that.
And he was placed in jail?
He was.
Okay. Now,
What are these questions?
my client, Mr. Stillwell, was charged in 2015, October 2015. who else did you say was
You need to
charged
send this to
at that
Rob.
time?
Antonio Sledge, briefly, because his case was dismissed at the preliminary hearing,
Okay.
Kenneth Copeland, and Demikian Garlington.
And that's the same Kenneth Copeland that is on the state's witness list.
Copeland?
Yes.
Wasn't that the
And-
Murphy movie?
It was
Detective Copeland?
Detective Thorpe of
One of
APD that made the decision to charge my client, Mr. Stillwell.
Yes.
No, it was
And it was
Police Academy.
Detective Thorpe of
Copeland.
APD who made the decision to charge Mr. Sumlin, Mr. Copeland, and Mr. Garlington.
Mr. Copeland, Mr. Garlington, I believe you meant to say Mr. Sledge?
Sledge, I'm sorry.
Yes, yes,
I said Sumlin instead of Sledge.
yes.
Was it a sister Sledge?
And you're
Hammer.
telling us
I don't know.
that the decision to charge those 4 individuals was based on the word of Spencer Wright?
Well, for 3 out of 4 of them, if my memory serves correctly, it was essentially entirely based on Spencer Wright. Your client, there was a little bit more evidence.
And we're going to get to that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So, but for the other 3, well, for all 4, a man named Spencer Wright claimed to be at the scene of the murder and named those people as being involved.
That's, yes.
And when Spencer Wright, are you aware of the circumstances that brought Spencer Wright into contact with Detective Thorpe to tell Detective Thorpe this?
Generally, yes.
Did Spencer Wright have pending charges?
Spencer Wright had been, if my memory serves correctly, I know that he didn't just show up to the precinct out of the goodness of his heart. He had been pulled over, if I remember correctly. During the traffic stop, he threw a gun away in the bathroom at the gas station. He lied about his name, and there was an investigator, Lakia Gaither, just happened to recognize him and reminded him of what his name actually was. So and he was, so he had a firearm, and I believe he had a probation violation warrant. So he was taken into custody contemporaneously with his statement.
And so we're clear, you wouldn't dispute that Spencer Wright had a motive to lie?
Yes,
That would be correct.
yes.
Okay. And Spencer Wright actually came in at the same time that he named these 4 individuals as being involved in this murder and gave police a false name?
He did at first, and one of them, like I said, just happened to know him. And this is all from memory, but I'm pretty sure this is correct.
So he lied about his name,
He did.
and the police knew this,
Yes, they did.
and they took his
Yeah,
word
come on. Your
who to
name's not
arrest
really
on a
Sprinkle,
murder.
is it?
That's what happened.
Don't
yes.
get coy with us.
Okay.
Let me guess. That's Miss Love, and that's Shard over there, and yeah, right.
And through your investigation, you would agree that 3 of the 4 defendants in this case have changed.
That's
since
impressive.
regarding the 2015 shooting.
3 out of the 4, okay, so first of all, what do you mean by change, and which 3 defendants are we
There
talking
was
about?
4 people that were charged in October of 2015 by Detective Thorpe.
Hmm.
3 of those 4 people are no longer charged.
Oh, I understand. In other words, we ultimately indict a different set of people than were ultimately charged by the police. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. We did indict Shannon Stillwell, aka Shannon Jackson, who's your client, but we did not charge Mr. Copeland, Mr. Garlington, or Mr. Sledge with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Well, let's be clear. They were charged
They were charged by the police, yes.
and they were arrested and put in jail
They were, yes.
based on the word of Spencer Wright,
That is correct.
who lied about his name.
He did.
And
Yeah.
in those 3 people's place that were eventually released, 3 new people have been charged.
That's, well, 4 people actually, but yeah.
Okay. 3 new people and Mr. Stillwell.
Yes.
So essentially what we're saying in layman's terms is Detective Thorpe added 250.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance
Basis.
and just unnecessary. Detective Thorpe batted 250.
Relevant and unnecessary.
So
I'm not sure which rule and just unnecessary falls under, but
You have your report, correct?
I do.
All right. And your report is approximately 100 pages long?
140, I believe.
140. Okay. And you began working in January of 2016?
That's correct. Yes.
I so hope Michael
And-
Sprinkle's middle name is Richard.
On page 2 of those 140.
and on that
Let me
note,
back
I'm going to
up.
go
I'm
get
sorry.
ready for my stream.
Yeah.
Almost the first
Okay.
leading witness in this
Sprinkle.
report.
Yeah.
See you soon, sir.
See you soon. Have
Take
fun.
care.
And yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm done.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Jeff, for showing up. I'm so happy I'm covering this trial because, I'm having a great time. No, I don't know if his middle name is Richard. I am hoping his middle name is Richard. Or there has to be a Richard Sprinkle out there somewhere. There has to be. If unnecessary questions were not allowed, trials would take about half the time. Yeah. Can't wait for Jeff to be late. Yeah, true. Well, let's continue. I don't know how much further this guy will be. It's going to be there a good while. He's going to be there a damn good while. Okay, so let's continue a bit more with this. Another
Is
minute.
your concerns about Spencer Wright?
Correct. That is
But that means
how my investigation began.
The next
Because
episode,
you were
we will
doing a thorough
hear more.
investigation and you looked at the video and noticed the man who was saying he witnessed the event was not where he said he was.
Correct.
And so your report, this 140-page report, begins with discussion of the video and Spencer Wright.
Yes.
On page 2 of the report, in the first paragraph, you talk about Detective Thorpe finding probable cause for these 4 individuals that are originally charged.
Yes.
And then you say, Kenneth Copeland, Demikian Garlington, and Antonio Sledge, or I'm sorry, you say Copeland, Garlington, and Sledge consisted almost entirely of the statement of Mr. Spencer Wright, correct?
Correct.
All right. You went on.
Yeah. Man from dildo discovers iceberg shaped like giant penis. Can Pretty, a photographer from the Canadian town of Dildo, discovered a yeah. Well, and that was just the tip of the iceberg.
To say with respect, or to write, with respect to Mr. Jackson, Mr. Wright also implicated him in the statement summarized below. However, there was another witness named Quindarius Zachary that also implicated Mr. Jackson.
That is correct.
Okay. So on page 2 of the report, you were saying that there was an additional witness against, when I said Mr. Jackson, you were calling Mr. Jackson report, but it's my client, Mr. Stillwell.
Yeah, back then he was known as Shannon Jackson. That's why I say Shan Jackson, aka Shan Stillwell, or vice versa.
All right. You as the investigator, did not have the same doubts or concerns about Mr. Jackson's case or Mr. Stillwell's case than you did with the other three defendants, based on additional witness testimony, correct?
Well, I mean, I at least had some evidence that he committed the murder. Yes.
All right, and just to be clear, in January 2016, when you're working on this case and throughout your investigation, Shannon Stillwell is still presumed innocent in jail.
He was in jail for about 250 days, I believe, on the murder charge before he was transferred, I want to say, to the Department of Corrections on unrelated matter. But yes, he was in jail, yes.
And he didn't bond out on this case until, on the 2015 case, until October of 2018, isn't that true?
I recall, if I remember correctly, he was booked into the jail on October 23rd and made bond the next day because he had obviously gotten a bond long before then because he had been in jail over 90 days on the murder.
Right, but he was in jail for 3 years.
On the murder?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe he was jailed for 3 years. I believe he was in jail for about 250 days on the
Okay,
murder.
well, we'll say 250 days. I mean, that's a substantial amount of time, correct?
But legally, it's subjective as to what's substantial.
Okay, well, you wouldn't want an innocent man locked in jail for that long.
Objection, argumentative.
I stain is to form.
Thank you,
I
Judge.
stain it.
Okay, are you an ethical prosecutor?
Yes.
And for the record, I believe Mr. Sprinkle is. Okay. If you felt that there was no case against Mr. Stillwell like you thought about the others, you would presumably have done something to get his release, correct?
Right. What I would have done is I would have told his defense attorneys that essentially there was no evidence, which is what I did with the other co-defendants. So.
Okay.
Right. But with Mr. Stillwell, the absence of evidence wasn't quite as stark.
Okay. And so you didn't take any proactive steps to seek the release of Mr. Stillwell like you did the others?
No.
Okay. How long has, to your knowledge, are you familiar with the internal workings of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
Pretty familiar. I've been working there for over a decade. So,
how long has the Fulton County District Attorney's Office been investigating YSL? I can't speak to what the gang unit was doing at around this time. They were in a section of the office to which I didn't have access. Now, if I knocked on the door, if they were there, they would generally let me in, but I didn't just have unfettered access to their area such that I could wander in at any given point. So they were by design closed off from the rest of the office. Well, certainly you were aware generally of whether there was as you were working this Donovan Thomas case, whether there was an active investigation of YSL.
Yes, there was. And so to answer your question, to the best of my knowledge, as far as I knew, or as far as I can remember, the investigation to YSL really started with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Okay, so 2015. And what about investigations into Jeffrey Williams?
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
Hi, Solomon.
I'm alleging that this has been a strategic decision to withhold the prosecution of Shannon Stillwell, who they claim to have had a case with or against, a solid case against since 2015. And I want to know why they waited 8 years to bring this
Well, then
case.
why don't you ask him?
Well, I want to know what investigation.
Oh, the objection. Go ahead and go ahead and ask him, please.
To your knowledge, how long have you had an investigation ongoing, when I say you, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, against Jeffrey Williams?
For me personally, it would have been around, I want to say April of 2016 when I found out that he rented the car that was utilized in the drive-by shooting.
Okay. What about, not you personally, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office?
That I can't answer. As far as I know, I don't know. I have no idea.
Is
If there were any other investigations regarding Mr. Jeffrey Williams, I don't know about them.
Well, could you answer if you knew, do you believe that you were the first person to begin an investigation into Jeffrey Williams, or do you believe that there was already investigations into Jeffrey Williams?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance into investigations regarding Jeffrey Williams.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you have discussions with Paul Howard about the Donovan Thomas case?
Yes.
How often?
Well, there would obviously, every few months, actually, maybe there were times it would actually be more often than that. It was definitely not one or two. I can tell you that. It was more than that.
Was he familiar with the facts of the case as alleged?
Yes.
Would Mr. Paul Howard have had access to the gang unit of the district attorney's office that you did not have unfettered access to?
I would presume yes. I guess I never asked him, nor did he ever tell me. It never came up, but given that he was the head of the entire office, I would assume that he had access to every room of the office. But I'm only assuming.
Do leaders of different units within the office meet with each other?
Yes, yes.
Is there coordination between units in the district attorney's office?
Yes, of course.
Was there coordinations between units back in 2015?
Yes.
Could there have been discussions?
We just went there to say hi.
These matters.
I'm sure.
Okay.
And people, oh, can we come back with you? Sure.
Mr. Sprinkle, you have, is it fair to say that you largely have an investigative function within the district attorney's office?
Well, yes, for the most part.
But you all are also an attorney.
I am.
You have a bar card.
I do.
You're familiar with the laws of, the rules of evidence in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree that we're in here today, not on a murder case, but a large RICO case, which one part of it has an alleged murder.
I am familiar with the indictment that is before the court that is being litigated right now. And I am familiar that the primary or the first count or couple of counts is a RICO case. As far as I'm concerned, I was primarily, if not really exclusively, concerned with the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Correct. But you are aware that this indictment that we're all in here today involves more than just the 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas.
I'm aware of that, yes.
Okay. And there are 4 people that you chose to charge and indict. Well, we'll get to that. There's 4 people that you advised the state to indict for the murder of Donovan Thomas.
Well, I believe there are 5, and I was definitely part of meetings regarding the indictment. But again, this was really Don Geary that was leading the charge on who to indict for the murder. Now, was I influential? Of course, but I wasn't the one who ultimately made that decision. But
You weren't the one to make the decision. When was this case ready to take to the grand jury, the alleged murder of Donovan Thomas?
Well, it wasn't an alleged murder. He absolutely was murdered. It was May of 2022.
It wasn't ready?
No, wait, when was the case presented to the grand jury?
When was it ready to take to the grand jury?
I can't, again, because Don Geary was the attorney that was working on that, and I wasn't, well, I guess it was ready when we presented it, right? I would assume.
Well, that's when your office chose to present it.
Yes.
I'm asking when it was ready.
I don't, you'd have to ask Don Geary that.
Okay.
Because as you said, this is more than just the murder of Donovan Thomas. This is a big RICO case. So.
I'm aware of that, but I'm very interested in when the singular incident, the January 2015 shooting of Donovan Thomas was ready to present to the grand jury?
I would just have to say May of 2022, unless you can define the word ready with a little more specificity.
So they weren't
That's when
ready
your office decided
until
to
they
present
chose
your answer.
to bring forward
Right,
the RICO
correct.
case,
Mr. Sharp, hold on
RICO
one second.
charge. So they weren't ready at all because they didn't have enough to charge them separately for the murder. So they chose to bring it into the RICO case. That's my interpretation.
Received credit from United States as to the newfound offense from which he got 10 to 3, went off to prison, came back, found it out next day. All the time he was only in there.
Yeah, as soon as I see Jeff going on, you know what, this is a good place since they are doing a bit of talkie. So we're going to leave Mr. Sprinkles, Miss Love, another prosecutor named Fanny, and the rest of the interesting names in this. Tomorrow we will continue, me and David, with the Jodi Arias trial. That would be noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central time, 6 p.m. my time. And Wednesday or Thursday, I will continue with this unless the trial actually starts. But as I said, don't know if it will start next week, next month, next year, but I will continue covering this RICO trial. So welcome back tomorrow. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you so much for the gifted memberships. Much appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you all tomorrow, and I will see you in Jeff's chat in a bit. So I will send you off with my usual outro, and I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.